Iran's foreign minister claims that his country's security forces have brought anti-government protests under control following 2 weeks of unrest across the country. Human rights campaigners say nearly 500 protesters have been killed so far, with thousands more detained. There's evidence of bodies being piled up at morgues. President Trump says the United States is considering what he calls very strong options on intervening in the crisis. Iran says it is prepared for war if the United States intervenes. Our World News correspondent Joe Inwood has the latest.
Faced with its biggest challenge in years, it was not always clear how the Iranian regime would respond to these protests. The bodies in this makeshift morgue leave little room for doubt. They have used extreme violence on the protesters. The death toll is impossible to calculate, but the BBC has counted at least 180 bodies in this one location.
Tehran is horrifying, more than 2,000 people killed. Forget every figure the Islamic Republic has released. We are facing an entirely new scale.
Getting testimony from the people who are taking part in these protests is difficult and dangerous. But people have spoken to the BBC's Persian service. We are protecting their identities for fear of regime reprisals.
It's like a war zone. The streets are full of blood. They're taking away bodies in trucks. Everyone is frightened tonight. They're carrying out a massacre here. It's officially a massacre.
So, what response from the man who promised to attack the regime if protesters were killed?
There seem to be some people killed that aren't supposed to be killed. These are violent. If you call them leaders, I don't know if they're leaders or just they rule through violence. But we're looking at it very seriously. The military is looking at it. And we're looking at some very strong options. We'll make a determination.
Exactly what those strong options are is not yet clear, but Iran's leadership has said it will defend itself.
You asked whether a preemptive operation is on our agenda. It is not. We do not want war, but we are completely ready for it. We are even more prepared than before the last war, and the reason for that is obvious.
These last few days have seriously threatened the clerical rule of this country. Their strategy now seems to be threefold: to get their supporters on the streets. Counter-demonstrations have been shown on TV around the country to suggest that life is returning to normal. This footage, broadcast on Chinese state TV, was taken at a shop in Tehran. And, of course, the use of extreme violence against the protesters. These security forces in the southern city of Kazarun seemingly shoot indiscriminately, and it is this final tactic which has been the most brutally effective. Trying to bring down this government was always going to be difficult and dangerous. But the youth of Iran have shown they want change and are willing to make huge sacrifices to achieve it. Joe Inwood, BBC News.
Well, let's speak live to Alex Vatanka, who's Senior Fellow at the Middle East Institute. Thank you for being with us. We've seen protests look like definitive uprisings before. Is this different, do you think?
Matthew, great to be with you. Look, I think it is different in a couple of reasons. Number one is I cannot remember Iranian society being this hopeless. I mean, it's not just the sanctions. Obviously, there are a huge burden on ordinary Iranians, and they've been going on for decades. It's if you're in Iran and you listen to the top political voice, in this case, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, you hear a man essentially who has no way out, who keeps saying that things are going to continue, we're going to stay on this path. And again, that suggests years of more pain and misery. And I think that was one of the factors that brought people back. I know the latest trigger was sort of economic with the currency of the rial collapsing, but it's about the hopelessness. It's about, I think, a wide demand in Iranian society for structural changes. Hence, we see the protesters shouting one day about the rial's value dropping to very quickly turning their attention to what they think is the key issue, which is the rule of Ali Khamenei. And that... Yes. We've seen it in the past, but this time around, it really turned fast around, and Ali Khamenei is the target, and that in itself makes it special.
And in the coming days, what will be crucial? Will it be the capacity to stay on the streets, or what Donald Trump decides to do?
In terms of capacity, Matthew, Iran, as we just heard in this segment, has dealt with rounds of protesters going back to the early 1990s. But what they have done in the past is they usually contain the situation after a few days, in some cases weeks. If these protests continue for weeks and perhaps months to come, it's a huge question mark if the security forces in Iran have the capacity to keep cracking down. Mind you, this isn't just happening in a single location. These are happening in 70, 80 locations across a nation, 3 times the size of France. So it's a huge undertaking. In terms of President Trump, we have to wait and see. The big question mark is this: is he looking at these protests as leverage, as something he can use to bargain for a better nuclear deal, but essentially accepting that the regime stays in place? That's one question that a lot of folks have in mind. But many people in Trump's inner circle are saying, listen, you could be the Ronald Reagan of your time. Iran essentially is the Soviet Union of sorts, or this is the Berlin Wall falling moment. What happens in Iran could have great impact on the rest of the Middle East, that you should not cut a deal with this regime. You should go for a creative way to end its life. Again, which way Donald Trump goes remains to be seen.
Well, tell me more. If it is the second option, the implications for the wider region if this Islamic Republic falls.
Look, if the Islamic Republic falls, let's go back. Islamism as we know it, militant Islamism, was essentially born in 1979 with the Islamic Republic, with people like Ali Khamenei coming to power. Today, they have no legitimacy left in Iran. And you could say they're weak and they've lost their way in the region. And the fall of the regime would essentially be the end of this political Islamist experiment over the last half a century. So I have no doubt it will have ramifications and be echoing around, just not in the Middle East, but perhaps even the wider Islamic world. It's a big moment potentially.